There's just ain't but one way, I guess, to get into it, and let's just get into it. And everybody knows Esau and Jacob. Esau sold his birthright. Jacob ran for his life. Esau went one way, Jacob went the other. And his mother instructed him, Jacob, to go to her brother's house, Laban. Are you with me? Laban is I can only put my mind and myself in Jacob's shoes when he had to leave home. Some of you that has grown up to be teenagers and you that are older can probably reminisce the time that you left home and it was such an emptiness. It was your security, but you knew you had to do it. Jacob is traveling and going to Laban's place. I don't know how many family reunions they've had for Jacob to know his uncle Laban, but evidently there was none because he had never met his uncle Laban. Stay with me. Don't make me do this by myself. I can only imagine the feeling that when he left the outskirts of his dad's property, Isaac, how he must have felt the emptiness split in half. Half of him is wanting to stay with his mother, his dad. The other half is fearful because he's having to run for his life and go into an area that he's not really familiar with. Stay with me. I can only imagine how he felt because between the time he left to where his next destination is, there's only probably 1,000,001 questions why this happened the way it did. Some people may say that Jacob was rejoicing because he got the birthright. He got his father's possessions. He was going to be blessed when his father dies. And I can only imagine the 1,001 questions that he had. I wish it could have been different, or I'm glad it played out the way that it did. But nevertheless, Jacob had thoughts. Now, I don't know how many times Jacob's been alone. I've tried to put myself in his shoes. Me being me and my makeup, I'm a loner. That is my nature. I can walk alone. I can eat alone. I can do whatever alone. It's just my nature. That's what I can do. I don't know how many times Jacob's been alone in his childhood, and how many times he played in his room by himself, or how many times he went to the creek and threw rocks and just tried to make sense of life. And now he's walking alone again. Maybe he's never been alone. Maybe mother's always been there. Maybe dad's always been there. Maybe he's not familiar with being lonely. But am I talking to anybody right now? One of the most tragic things is when a man or woman falls into loneliness and they have nowhere to run to. It can end up in tragedy. So now this destination that he is going to is a very familiar destination where on a daily basis he is headed to his uncle's house, Laban. He is going to approach an area before he gets to Laban's house because he really doesn't know where Laban really lives. He just knows he's in that region. He comes to a place where men and women gather every single day, and the grass is dead. The stones are dug up. There's pathways all around this well, and this well is very familiar with people's conversations, and if it had ears to hear and lips to talk and a tongue to speak with, it'd probably tell you story after story of people that have sat there waiting on the stone to be pushed away so that the water could be drawn only once a day. And he could probably, if he could talk, could tell you the stories and the pain and the hurt and the hopelessness and all of the backbiting and the cursing and all the regrets and failures and probably a time or two. If he could talk to you, it would probably tell us about people that has talked about loneliness. Are you with me? Don't make me preach by myself. I feel this from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. So it's a very tragic thing to be lonely when you feel like that no one cares. And I'm pretty sure at this point, Jacob is becoming familiar with loneliness. Jacob is a man that is acquainted with a woman's ways. He has a way with women because he was pretty much raised by his mother. He was a mother's boy. It doesn't make him less than a man. He's a great man. He's a very powerful man. And he knows how to speak to ladies. He knows how to treat women because he loved his mother. And I can say this to the men in this church and those that are watching live. If you want to learn how to treat your wife, then learn how to love God. Are you with me? And if you love your mother and respect your mother, then you will love and respect your wife. In some cases, I know that's out of hand, but for most men that have great mothers, please reverence your mother. I don't think that Jacob is dealing with loneliness because I don't know how many people he's passed and said hello to, maybe talked to, maybe asked for directions to get to Laban's house. Probably if he did, most of the people didn't know Laban, and if they did, they would give him general directions because surely a lot of people knows Laban because he has a lot of servants and a lot of handmaids. He has a lot of land. He has a big farm, and he's a very wealthy man, somewhat of a wealthy man, but you have to understand that now Jacob is left home, and according to the rabbis and the word of the Lord, he is left empty-handed. Daddy didn't give him any money. He didn't have a bank account. He didn't have a credit card. He didn't have Venmo. He didn't have all of those things. He just simply was broke. He was living and traveling on a prayer that his mother were praying and that his hope would carry him to a place to save his life. When he first left, he wasn't leaving because he was planning to get rich and because he was planning to find a wife. He was leaving because he was simply trying to save his life. Are you with me? Are you with me this evening? That being said, this evening I will tell you that when he gets to this well where the grass is down, the cattle is brought in, the sheep is brought in, it is, according to Scripture, the stone is pushed away once a day. And they water the sheep, they water the goats, they water the cattle, they water everything. Jacob gets there to the well. Jacob finds a group of men there that is ready to prepare to water their cattle. And Jacob asked them how come they hadn't watered their cattle. And the man spoke back to Jacob and said, well, only once a day we remove this stone, and we do everybody at one time because there is dust storms, and dust and sand will get down into the well. If somebody happens to leave and it's unattended, an animal could get in and contaminate the well. So we have to protect what God gave us, and that is our job to be sure that the stone is over the well so that nothing can get in the well. The conversation doesn't go very long until Jacob finds the courage, and after their little small talk, that he would ask those men, well, since you have cattle here and you know your way around, do you know a gentleman by the name of Laban? One of the men said, yes, we know Laban, know him very well. He's a great guy. And sure enough, at this time every day, his daughters bring his sheep down with our cattle, and we water together. The stone is so heavy they really can't push it, so we're here to help push the stone over, and we help water them. And while he was talking, the Bible said that he looked at Jacob and said, well, I'll be. He said, there comes Rachel right there, and she's bringing the sheep down, and we're going to water. Jacob, doing what he knew to do because he was raised in a great home, he moved the stone himself, and by moving the stone, he watered Rachel's sheep and asked her a few questions. And when he found out that that was Rachel and that Laban was her dad, he kissed her on the side of the face, and he wept with a loud voice when he found out that he had met somebody that was acquainted with a man that he was supposed to go to save his life, and hopefully he wouldn't have to live in loneliness the rest of his days. So he follows her back home. Actually, she runs home and tells her dad, hey, I've met this man, and it's your sister's son. It's your nephew. His name is Jacob. He comes down, they make reunion, and they go back to his house. He stays there for several weeks, 4 weeks to be exact. The Bible called it a month. And Laban approaches Jacob, and he says to him, I'd like for you to stay here, and I'd like for you to work, but I can't make you work for nothing. So what is the price that you would give me to stay here and work? And seems that you're very familiar with farming. You could help and you could lead. And he thought about it. It didn't take him very long. And he said, well, the law is if I can serve because I have no money, I have nothing to give to you. I know that's the custom, and I have nothing to offer, but I'd like to have your daughter. I'd like to have Rachel. He said, but I'll work 7 years, and so what you would pay me for 7 years would be my dowry to purchase her. And he made an agreement with Jacob. Jacob began his work, and he's working for Rachel. I don't know how many times Jacob and Rachel had met in the kitchen. I don't know how many times they met passing through, maybe went down to the well together again. But the Bible said that Jacob loved Rachel because she was absolutely attractive and gorgeous. Something about her voice and her ways and her touch and her smile, her eyes that just got his attention. He fell deeply, deeply in love with Rachel. Y'all still with me this evening? Now he is acquainted with her sister, which is older, is Leah. Leah, the Bible said her eyes were very weak, and to the point that most scholars say that you couldn't see her eyes because her eyes was almost closed. It was because it was almost a defect in her facial features. She had the body of just like Rachel. Her voice was like Rachel. She would do things like Rachel, but when it came to her face and her eyes, he couldn't get into her. And so he wasn't there to work for Leah, for her older sister, but he was there to work for Rachel. I want you to hold on to me now. And Rachel is a woman that probably is, the one that's recognized at middle school and high school and college. And, they talk to her. People gather around her because, she looks like one of the preps. She just fits in there. But Rachel's a good girl. She has a little bit of, slyness in her spirit. I can prove it to you because she stole her daddy's stuff one time. And she was sly in some areas, but it didn't matter because in the eyes of Jacob, all of the bad, it didn't override the good because she had more good for her than she had bad. Are you with me this evening? Don't make me preach by myself. And so now Leah is going into a zone. She is of age to get married. And this is what I felt today. That some of us in this room If we could have a name change, we could probably be called Leah, when the rest of us could probably be called Rachel. The problem now is, the Bible said in the middle of the chapter, how many days and how many times did Jacob count down to the day of the 7-year mark that he was going to be able to marry the beautiful woman, the woman of his dreams? So he wakes up one morning, the day goes to Laban. He says, I have fulfilled my 7 years, and I'd like to have my Rachel. It's my Rachel. I want my Rachel. I've got to have my Rachel. The custom is, it's not an American tradition the way they do weddings there in that country. It's they would marry and then they would have a 7-day feast. Things would happen. They would rejoice. They would rejoice with the bride. They would give gifts. They would come far and near to celebrate. And so that was the custom. You had to spend 7 days with your wife. You couldn't go. You couldn't go to her. She couldn't come to you. You were just married. You sealed it when you were intimate, and it was 7 days of preparation. Are you still with me? They call it fulfilling the week. And so now he is going to prepare a wedding, and Jacob is excited. I'm sure he's met Rachel and said, I can't wait until we can get married in just a couple of days. Everything is going to be beautiful. We're going to have children. We're going to have a lifestyle. We're going to have it. Man, I'm a hard worker. I'm going to provide for you. You'll never have to want for anything. You'll never have to hold a job. You say it, I'll make it happen. If you desire it, I'll work hard for it. He is wooing her. If I could hang the stars for you again, I would do it. If I could pull the moon down, I'd pull it down. If I could orbit the sun, I'd orbit the sun. I would do anything. We would take a ship across the world. We would travel the 7 seas and see all the wonders of the world. And I'm sure he's probably building her up, but the number one thing is that he is just wanting to marry her so that he can have children with her and live and grow old and die with Rachel, because he's madly in love with this woman. But don't forget about Leah. Leah is a custom that Leah is the first one that should get married. It is a custom in that country, and Leah is not attractive. Leah is not the one that you would prefer out of all the women that is there, because she was sweet, she was kind, she was loving, she was a hard worker, she was respectful, she loved her mom, she loved her dad, she loved Rachel, she cared about Jacob, but she kept wondering why loneliness is targeting her. Why is it that Rachel gets all the blessings and all the attention? And why does Rachel get all of this stuff? And I'm sitting here living alone, being lonely. It doesn't make sense. I'm on the couch by myself, and Rachel is out with her friends. She gets invited to the city square. They get to go shopping. They go to Starbucks. They go get a hamburger, but I'm always the last one on the list. And so now Rachel has to live in loneliness. Am I talking to anybody in this room right now? And so she has to go to bed every night, probably wiping tears from her face, because she hears Rachel coming in, and Rachel has had a ball of the evening and a ball of the night, and here's Rachel. I can't find anybody that will love me, anybody that will care about me. I didn't make myself this way. God created me this way. God knew I was going to be this way. Why didn't Dad say something different? Why couldn't he do something different? Why couldn't Rachel have these birthmarks? And why does it have to be me? So she has to live her life in loneliness. Anybody ever feel like you're lonely tonight? You ever feel like everybody else gets the best and you get second best? Come on, somebody talk to me tonight. Don't make me preach by myself. If I'm boring you, you're dismissed. And so they prepare the wedding, and so little does Mr. Jacob know is that Laban has already set down Leah and said, Leah, I know that you have dealt with a lot of things in life. It's not been fair. I know that you have questions and no answers. I understand that, honey, but I'm going to do something for you that you probably never heard of. I am going to give you unto Jacob. Well, how's that going to happen, Dad? He didn't work 7 years for me. He worked 7 years for Rachel. See, Dad, Rachel's more valuable than me, that Rachel can have a man that was slave for 7 days or 7 years and buy her. He doesn't have money, doesn't have a dowry, he just has to work hard. Dad, how is that going to happen? Well, honey, you know the custom. You have to wear a heavy veil. It has to be evening and nighttime. When we do our tradition, I'm going to send you into his bedchamber, and you're going to marry. He's going to lie with you and seal the deal. So Rachel doesn't fight Dad. Rachel doesn't say, no, Dad, that's not fair to Rachel. Leah says it's not. She doesn't say it's not fair. She just goes with the program. Now it's my time to get out. Now it's my only chance to get out of the house. My only chance for somebody to love me for who I am. And so it has to be through conniving. You would say that it has to be through conniving, right? You'd have to say that there was something underlying there. There was something that was brewing. And so they've done their tradition and doing their celebration. And when it comes time, when the lights are out, the heavy veil is on, because they look just almost alike according to history, except for the eyes. You have to understand they're sisters, that she goes in, and so everything is dark, and he lies with her. They go to sleep, wake up the next morning. He looks at her in the face to say, good morning, Rachel. I'm so glad to be your husband. Good morning, Rachel. Can I get you biscuits and coffee and eggs and grits and toast? And so when he looks in her face, he recognizes it's not the woman that he paid the price for. It was a woman that he didn't want to have anything to do with. He never mistreated Leah. He never disrespected Leah. He wasn't raised that way. His mother told him that you didn't do women that way. So evidently that he cared about her enough and respected her enough that even Leah even had feelings for him, because it's the way he treated a woman, the way that he treated Rachel, the way he treated their mother. She had respect for him. And then all of a sudden the lights comes on and the switches are on and the power is on, and he says, this is not Rachel. And so he leaves out of there, leaving Leah again. Now what you gonna do, Leah? You feel like you're all alone again. You've come to a point in your life, Leah, where you thought there was just a little bit of hope here, and that the man that you thought that would love you after intimacy was just walked away, left you again. How many times, Leah, have you been walked away from? Anybody? Am I talking to anybody in this room right now? How many times have you been walked away from? But there's a healing process. And so Leah has to gather her things. She doesn't know what to do. She's confused. She doesn't know what to say. She can't run to Dad and tell him the story, but perhaps she did tell him the story. And so he runs to Laban really quickly, being the man that Jacob, his dad and mother, taught him to be. Looked at Laban in the face and said, why did you deceive me this way? That's not Rachel. I worked 7 years for Rachel and not Leah. He looks at him and says, it's not lawful in our country to give you the younger before the oldest. I had to give you Leah. Y'all still with me this evening? He says, I didn't want Leah, I wanted Rachel. He said, fulfill her week and be sure that you take these 7 days and be a husband to her, and I'll give you Rachel. You're going to have to work another 7 years, but the Bible said that when Jacob fulfilled, hear me well now, that when Jacob fulfilled the 7 days of Leah, that Laban saw the face and the attributes and the countenance of Jacob, and he took unto him Rachel. He didn't have to work 7 years to get her, even though he did work another 7 years. Y'all still with me this evening? But in 7 days, he was able to hold the woman that he worked 7 years for the first time he's ever put his hands around her shoulders and loved her the way he wanted to love her. But that doesn't change the fact that Leah, that doesn't change the fact that some of you are sitting right here tonight, and you can come to church and the lights is on and you smile, but when you go home and lay your head down, you ask yourself, why do I have to do what I do? And why do I have to face what I face? Why do I have to put up with what I have to put up? It's because God has got a promise for you. You're going to have to wake up and realize you're not in this by yourself. You may feel like, are y'all with me this evening? that you're all alone, but you're not alone because God is with you. You know why God is with you? It's because anything that Jacob touches is going to be blessed, like his grandfather Abraham, his dad Isaac. Everything that he touches, everywhere he plants his feet, is going to be blessed. Everything that he, in his business, everything that he acquires is going to be blessed. He's going to be a blessed. So whoever is connected to him is going to be blessed. And so now you have to understand there's something that transpired in those 7 days that you must understand. It didn't take 6 months for this to come to pass, but somewhere in those 7 days of Jacob fulfilling the week of Rachel, that the Bible said that when God looked at Leah and saw that she was, I quote to you verbatim, that she was hated of all people, but Rachel was loved. You know what God did? He looked at Rachel and looked so pretty on the outside and looked so well on the outside, that was invited to everything that seemed to be, popular. And everywhere she went, everybody recognized the beauty of this woman. God reached in her womb and shut her womb down, but because she was loved more than Leah. But the Bible said that God looked upon Leah and saw that she was hated. And the Bible said that he reached into her womb and then he opened her womb so that she could conceive. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying tonight? Somewhere in those 7 days, you hear what I'm about to tell you, somewhere in the next 7 days of somebody in this room, God is going to give you a purpose. And God is going to give you a plan. And God is going to take the loneliness away from you. You hear what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden things begin to change in her body. And then she found out she was pregnant. And inside of her womb was a man by the name of Reuben. And she had that baby and beheld that baby. And that's what his name means, as behold a son. She was blessed, and surely then, and only then, that Leah said, surely God has saw that I have been hated, and now he has opened my womb and gave me a man child. Are you hearing what I'm saying this evening? It was a miracle that God had conceived in her within those 7 days. Are you hear what I'm saying? And so that because she's still the wife with Rachel of Jacob, hear what I'm going to tell you tonight, that somewhere she conceived again and had another man by the name of Simeon, and Simeon was born, and she embraced that boy, and then she lied with him again and had the third son that was Levi. And she beheld Levi and petted him and loved him and gave him a great name and a purpose. And somewhere later he had another relationship with her, and she conceived and brought forth Judah. Hear what I'm telling you. And so she has all 4 of these men, and she's embracing these men. And now every time she has a baby, she is saying, maybe this time somebody will love me. Maybe, watch what she said, my husband will love me for who I am. But how many times did she go to bed lonely? Are you hearing what I'm saying? So she has another baby, Issachar. She has another baby. And so the Bible said that she has a daughter by the name of Dinah. Slowly but surely taking away the loneliness. But when am I going to heal? I'm closing now. When am I going to heal? When am I going to heal? When am I going to ever get over this? I've done everything I'm supposed to, and it just seems to get worse. Can I finish? Rachel is, I'm done. I'm not preaching much longer. Rachel is feeling something different in her body. Now Jacob is having sons with the handmaids. It's a struggle going on now between Leah and Rachel, because Leah's filling the house, but only Rachel can feel Jacob's heart. So her body starts changing to the point that God sees that Rachel is going to suffer. She never had to suffer a day in her life. She's married to a man that's madly in love with her. There's no reason to sweat, right? So God sees that Rachel is screaming out to Jacob finally, give me a baby or give me death. The Bible said Jacob gets mad at her, screams at her and says, why would you say that to me? You think I'm God? You think I can just open up your womb and give you a baby? Read it for yourself. It's in there. He's angry. The Bible said Jacob got angry with her. He said, I can't believe you would say that to me. I've given you everything that I've got. Are you hearing me tonight? Oh, I feel it. So, God opens her womb. She has a baby. His name is Joseph. God opens the womb the second time with mercy, and she has her last son, which is Benjamin, and she dies while she's giving birth. And where they are is it's not in Laban's house. Where they are is not in Laban's fields or what the Bible would call a booth. They're not there. They're in transition from Laban's house to go back to Bethlehem or Ithra. And on their way, she has the baby and she dies. There's a place called Bethel that used to be called Luz. Now it's called Bethel. And it's the house of God. She lays there and has a kid. She dies. And they dig a hole there in the rocks. And they take pretty little Rachel that used to be the queen. And they bury that precious girl. She is buried. Leah is standing there crying over her sister, probably reminiscing the conversations between Leah and Rachel, the animosity, the scratching, the fist fighting, the harsh words, and all of the things that are derogatory toward one another, because there's a fight going on between Leah and Rachel. But now they find themselves at the place called Bethel, which is simply Luz, the house of God. They're there, and she's watching her sister draw her last breath, and maybe under the breath of Leah, she is saying, I would to God that it was me and not Rachel. I've bore many children and she's only bore two. Maybe she's living in regret at this point, watching her sister gasp for breath and trying to get air and in pain and blood everywhere because she's trying to deliver a little man by the name of Benjamin. And all of a sudden there's nothing you can do, Leah, but stand there and watch her. Nothing that you can say that will change the mind of God, because she was loved, Leah, and Leah, you have been hated all of your life. And then she draws her last breath, and everybody stands over her, and the tears are running down the face. But you have to understand, how does Jacob feel that the woman that he has loved all of these years, the woman that he was attracted to, has drawn her last breath, but he's not lonely because he still has Leah. But Leah is not going to fulfill him like Rachel can fulfill him. Are you hear what I'm saying? And some of you tonight is looking for things and people to fulfill you, and you're never going to be fulfilled until you discover your purpose and get on track with your purpose and realize that God has not deserted you. He's not walked away. Are you hear what I'm saying? Now, let me close. Somebody say close. Watch. I don't know how many men dug the hole, but all I do know is the Bible said that when they dug it, wrapped her, placed her in it, covered her. Now Jacob is gazing around to find a headstone. And the Bible said he found one. He put it at her head. And the Bible said that it's still there to this day. It is an icon. Are you hearing what I'm saying? People that pass by. This is in Genesis 29. Are you still with me? I'm closing. I'm done. And now Leah, what are you going to do now, Leah? Leah said, can I have him all to myself? I don't know if Leah really felt that way, because surely some of you in this room has probably said what she would probably have said. I didn't agree with her and I didn't like it, but surely I didn't want my sister to die. I didn't want her to pass. That's not my purpose. I just wanted somebody for a change in my life to love me and be who I need them to be. That's all I wanted, and that's why I did what I did. But maybe you said that. Maybe you have had people to walk out of your life where you have said, I didn't mean for that to happen, but nonetheless, it's a work of God, and I got to let God do what He does, and so we'll just let that be as it is. Are y'all still with me this evening? I got to give me 3 minutes, okay? Okay, and all of a sudden they have to just continue to walk, because he is headed back to he's headed back to Ithra. He is headed back because God has got a plan for Jacob, and God's got a plan for Leah. Y'all still with me tonight? So now she has him all to herself, and now I don't know the relationship between the two, but I do know that when Jacob and Leah died, that they buried them together in the same place, at the same tomb. They buried them together. Are you still hearing me? That was the plan to start with. Could it be that Jacob got sidetracked and thought that was what was lustful to the eye, that he bypassed what God had planned for him with Leah? It doesn't really say that, but maybe we could just kind of discover some of those things. But nevertheless, he was married to 2 beautiful women, and then he has 2 younger sons that's going to carry the promises on. And I want to say this to you in closing, that all of these things that you have been contending with, and all of these things that you feel like that you have travailed with and given birth to, and you've cried by yourself and wondered why. What is it about me that people don't like? What is it about my words that people don't understand? What is it about my appearance that people can't fathom, or they can't agree with, or what have you? What is it have I ever done to anybody that would make them to separate themselves from me? It just might not be you, honey. It just might be your anointing that God gave you, and your purpose in your life that you've never discovered yet. And so when God has a purpose for you and He has an anointing for you, people are not going to understand who you are and where you're going. You hear what I'm saying? Because anointing is supernatural. Hear me what I'm about to say. But now you have to understand a few books later, in the book of Judges, there's a group of men that needs to hear from God, and so they pass through Bethel, and they see Rachel's gravesite there, and so now they make that the house of God. And the book of Judges, when nobody was judging Israel, do you know what they did? They would remember what Jacob done with Rachel. They remembered that Rachel was buried in Bethel, and it was a testimony, and they would go back to Bethel, and they would get around that tombstone, and they would pray unto God, because that was the only place that they could find the voice of God. Let me tell you something tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes you have to bury things in order for God to talk to you. The problem is we want it to stay alive, and the will of God may be that He wants to bury it. And it's only then that His voice becomes clear. So I promise I'm closing. You're going to have to understand. You have to let things be buried in order for God to give you an answer. Listen to me, ready? When no judges judged Israel and there was no kings, they pulled themselves together at Bethel, where Rachel was buried, prayed unto God, and God talked to them. So they made it a place where people gathered because of the tomb of Rachel. You hear me? Because it was the power of the testimony in transition from Laban's house to Ephrath. Are you hearing me? Where God decided, now is the time to bury it. And people go there still today. I don't think they pray there, but they know where it's at. Would you stand to your feet? You need to discover your purpose. You know why some people run from pillar to post? It's because they've never found purpose. And they've lived in loneliness all of their life. They say loneliness is a disease, but I believe loneliness can be healed. Somebody said amen. So how many in this room, as I get out of the way, can think back in your life, because this is what I'm going to leave with you before I leave, that something or somebody has happened that is a reoccurrence in your spirit is the reason that you annihilate relationships and you annihilate friendships and you annihilate finances and never stable when it comes to certain things in your life. Do you think that it just might be that you've never found your purpose? There's a pastor that has a son that backslide. He's back in church now. He's been out for many years. They asked him, how did he get him back in church? You know what he said? He said he was drinking, heavy on drugs, chasing the women, robbing, been to jail. You name it, he done it. And the pastor said, and even when I would pray for him, in the back of my mind, I would say, what is the use? And he said, do you know what got my son in church? Was it that he didn't find an altar first? He didn't find Jesus at first. And I'm like, okay, where are you going with this? Because that don't even make sense. He didn't find the church first. He didn't find a calling first. When he woke up in the middle of the night, he said, Dad, for the first time in my life, I found purpose. And that purpose drove me to go back to the altar, repent, and pray back through. When I realized that I really do have a reason to live, that there is a purpose in my life. Young men, you have a purpose. All of you have a purpose. Young ladies, you have a purpose. Stay in the church. Forget about the world. Forget about all that mess. It's garbage. We've been there. I can tell you all about it. It's garbage. Find your purpose and achieve your purpose. Sister Rhoda, you know why your kids struggle? They're just like everybody else's kids. They're precious and they're valuable. Some of them haven't found their purpose. You know why Mark's not saved? Because he hadn't found his purpose. Hopefully your granddaughter found purpose. Does that make any sense? Because when I realized what I needed to do, I made changes. Didn't do it overnight, but I knew. When I wrecked my Firebird, Thunderbird, and it was almost flipped. And I had to hand Ashley, she was a little bitty thing, out the window to people that were passing by on the highway. They drug us out, me and my wife, out of the car, took us across the road to the convenience store, and I sit there with the state trooper waiting on people to come. I found a purpose. You know what my purpose was, Mike Pullins? This is a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. You should have your sorry carcass in the church where you was raised, where you were brought up at, and take your little girl and your wife to church. And I sit there at that table with that trooper, and I made a vow to God. Lord, tonight at 6 o'clock, I will be at Mill Creek Church of the Lord Jesus Christ. Don't know what I'm going to do when I get there, but I'm going to the church. And she was a baby, and God's been good to me. Hear me? Just in a moment of a twinkling of an eye, me and my family could have been history. But somebody prayed for my purpose. So now I'm standing here 51 years and 2 days and 51 years old. I'm standing here all of these years talking to somebody in this room, telling you the same thing I experienced. Just find your purpose. And Leah found her purpose. Leah found her purpose. She found her purpose. When she sought all of her years, I'm done. When she sought all of those years, what is my purpose? When they buried Rachel, and then she got old and stricken in age, and so did Jacob. Finally, she says, I found my purpose. She lived the rest of her days happy. She found her purpose, but she had to put up with some stuff. You with me this evening? I don't want you to come down here and bow. I'm going to invite you, if you want to come, because it's 8:40. I want you to come. I want you to stand here like men and women and lift your voices and your hands and your heart and say, Lord, if I don't have my purpose, would you please show me my purpose? Because if you don't, you're going to leave this room and you're going to go home and you're going to struggle. What is my purpose? Well, tonight we're going to ask him, Leah, we got some Rachels here. But I'd rather have a house full of Leahs than I have a house full of Rachels, because Leah does her part. Whatever the will of God is, Lord, give me my purpose. Give me my purpose. Whatever it is, Lord, show me my purpose. One of the most powerful weapons this church will ever get is when we find our purpose. One of the most powerful gifts and weapons you will ever fight with in your prayer meeting is when you have purpose. Because if you go to God and you don't have purpose, you'll be scatterbrained, scattermind, and no faith. But if you go to God every day with purpose, going, I know my purpose, you have faith in your prayer, God hears you, and God performs miracles. He makes provision. He'll heal your body. He'll save your family. I don't see it right now. Preacher. Well, you'll see it. If you'll say right now, tonight, Lord, I'm giving you my purpose. My grandsons, my granddaughters, Sister, I'll find you in just a minute. Did she leave? Sister Garrett, where's Sister Garrett at? Where's she at? Somebody needs to tell her. You got purpose. Tell her that her grandkids has got purpose, because the enemy's trying to destroy. The enemy's trying to destroy her family. Her kids has purpose. My kids got purpose. Your kids got purpose. Your kids just got purpose. It's 8:42. You've took 2 minutes. You've took 2 minutes. I think there's something inside of you right now that you really want to say to God. You need to say it. Y'all can sing tonight. I'm done. He's done with me. He don't need me anymore. It's between you and God, ladies and gentlemen. It's between you and God. I told you what he said today. You got to find your purpose. You got to find your purpose. You got to get a hold of your purpose. I'm too far gone. No, you're not too far gone. Leah found hers. But in the process of her finding her purpose, God used her. God used Leah to bring over half of the tribes of Israel. 6 of them, 6 men and 1 daughter. Brought half of them. Go ahead and sing. Go ahead and sing.
What you'd have for me, take control. You know the only way to freedom is letting go.